Hello everyone, hope you're doing well and welcome here to another live stream practicing session as we tend to do lately on Monday 5 p.m. here in Brussels time and Thursday 8:30 at the clavichord, also Brussels time in the evening. So today again around the Beethoven project, that's the project that we're heading for, preparation for that, and will be recording. If everything goes okay, of course, you always have to speak with two words because it's a big project. 60 works of Beethoven solo works from September onwards, something like that. I don't recall the dates exactly. So in 3 years to have recorded all the Beethoven solo works, most of them in 60 works and 22 CDs. So all the preparation of parts of the preparation sharing with you is something I would really like to do. And as I said before, these practicing sessions there are of great help to me because there is a different kind of focus, different kind of concentration, because we are doing this together. Virtually you are here and you can feel the presence of all of you really well. So it helps a lot. So today we are going to have a look at Beethoven Sonata number 2 in A major. Second part, that's the Largo. It's a very challenging piece, regardless of what tempo you take this in, double beat, single beat. This is one of those pieces you can play in single beat, but it's a really difficult piece to hit that character, to move the effect of the piece quite directly, quite exact. And you have to, because otherwise you have to mold and create the character and the mood of this piece to really enhance what Beethoven has hidden in those notes. It's a magical piece, but again, challenging. We're going to dive into that. I'm going to play parts of that, and probably today is going to be a session where I will be playing a lot because sometimes this works, sometimes this doesn't work at all. To be honest, I was preparing this session an hour ago and it went really fabulously. I would have recorded that, but of course, the mood of that recording, of that performance is somewhere here. It's disappeared. So I'll say a quick hello to you in the chat. And as always, with these live streams, in about 4 or 5 minutes, we start really with the session. So if you watch this as a replay later, then you can scroll to 5 minutes or something like that. And then you'll hear me play or start the session. So it's been a while with the live sessions. So last week we were on holiday. Anya and the kids and I was happy enough to be welcome on their holiday. No, just kidding. So we had a wonderful week in the north of Holland, spending just time with the four of us. There's a place really up north to Groningen, really in the north of Holland. So that's the Netherlands. We're living here in Belgium, but we speak the same language in the north of Belgium and in the Netherlands. And there you have I don't know what the name is in English, but we call that the Waddenzee, which is basically one of the first. That's not basically a sea; it's one of the places where Holland is bordering at the North Sea. But there you have the some artificial islands because the Dutch people did some amazing works there in holding back the water, and so that's an artificial island with a little, very small holiday park. There is nothing to do, basically nothing, just nature and emptiness, and we love to be there. It's our 10th year in a row that we go there, so we had a wonderful time. And that was the reason that I didn't have live streams but recorded sessions in Premiere, so which you tend to like because I was watching my own Premiere with you in the chat. Can you imagine that? So Dag is here, great to have you as always. Kirill Siller, shouldn't mix your first letters here. Mr. Unknown God. All welcome. Anya's in the chat. Anya's my wife, in case you would know that, is moderating the chat. And if you have questions that you would like to hear my opinion about, just leave them in the chat. Even if you don't have time to stay until the end, we always try to end these sessions at about 1 hour. But because of the fact I will be playing a lot, so I will be jumping into your questions into the chat most of the time at the end of the live streams. But if you have questions and you have not time to stay until the end, Anya will take note of those and will come downstairs and will share them with us here. William Walker, Greetings from Ukraine. Great. Andrei is here. Kostas, our Greek friend and composer. Kostas is coming in a few weeks and staying a few days with us. We might think about doing something together for YouTube. World Towning, hi there. Will, cheers from Turkey. Wow. So that our friends on YouTube, they're crossing the world and they do amazing things and now are, if I'm not mistaken, are on a sailing boat. Jess Bach is here, always nice to have a name like that attending my live stream. Emmy is here from Finland. Jonathan. Bruce, cheers from California. It's always great to see that we reach with these live streams 5 continents actually, always. And YouTube is pushing for these live streams more than for the premieres, as I can have seen, but that's just a side remark. Shivan Kimino of Menon, don't know how to pronounce your name. Michael Walter, great to have you. Theoretically musical. Will you be playing Chopin Mazurka Opus 7 number 1? I think I have done the Chopin Mazurkas on clavichord, but if that was Opus 7, I think, just check in the Chopin playlist, you will find them. Modern musician, okay, from Houston. Great to have you all here. I'm sure some people will jump in as we go. And so without further ado, let's jump into this practicing session. I would like to start by just presenting you or just sharing with you this book, which is actually a great tool if you play Beethoven sonatas. It's written by Adolf Bernhard Marx. Don't know if you can see that, the camera will not focus. It's on manual focus. But anyway, Adolf Bernhard Marx, Anleitung zum Vortrag Beethovensche Klavierwerke. I have the German version is actually a gift from Lorenz Gradient. But you can find on IMSLP, I think, or archive.org, the English version as well. And so Marx was kind of an important person at the days. He wrote this book in 1863. So really at the end of his life, has known Beethoven, was also chief editor of the Berliner Allgemeine Musikalische Zeitung. So that's not the Wiener and not the Leipzig Allgemeine Musikalische Zeitung, but an important magazine. I think they were all kind of connected. And Beethoven loved to read his pieces. They were kind of thought-provocative and sometimes even controversial, but apparently Beethoven liked those, and they were not controversial in musical sense, but in other things. It's really interesting. So Marx wrote a number of important writings on music. You will find also other theoretical works in which he is actually one of the most important double beat sources. We're going to make a video on that. I've done that in the past, I think, in between some other subjects, but I'm going to repeat that and do it in a better way, present that to you. And so this book, written in 1863, is of course in a time where Beethoven was, I mean, there were a few people who were carrying on the kind of Beethoven tradition. Marx is not as close as, I think, as Czerny and Moschles are. Czerny, I think, is the closest if you really want to come as close as possible to an edition that gives you a kind of, you know, it's an interpretation perhaps, but still Czerny was focusing on the original way of Beethoven's playing, I think. Even then you have to put him in the right context. Adolf Marx, certainly, he writes something about pedaling that it certainly wasn't true for the period where Beethoven lived in. So, but other than that, what's great about these sources, 19th century original sources, is that you have, if you can read them within the context, and that you have to reconstruct for yourself, there is no guideline here, that you will find more or less echoes and glimpses of an original practice. And in the case of Adolf Bernhard Marx, you'll find a lot of things that I think generally go back to the way Beethoven, perhaps not was playing, but could be presented as authentic, so to say. Certainly what's interesting here is the description of the character of the pieces, and that's the point I want to make. So, because again, as I said at the beginning, this Largo is an extreme piece in a sense. It's Largo for a reason. So it's in all the Largos and all these, also the Adagio sostenutos of Beethoven, you have this really romantic idea that already in Mozart and Clementi was present before Beethoven. But Beethoven, as he expands everything, is also here creating something that goes to the extremes of the human feelings. And once you hit that, magic happens. But when you miss it just by a millimeter, it's completely off. And when people write about what the character of the affect of the mood of the piece is, what the piece is about, in fact, it always helps. And Marx gives a beautiful overall idea of what this piece should be about. And I have printed the English version because translating German directly into English is difficult. So he writes in the English version, the Largo following the first movement, is marked appassionata, not according to the sense of the word to indicate passion, but only to point out the deep, thoughtful content which is heard therein. The song is quiet and majestic, like the meditation, and there it comes. It's a beautiful description of the character, like the meditation of a noble soul in loneliness under a starry sky. So you can perhaps today in our times we are used to abstract art and things like that, and we don't like to talk about music that we like as pieces with a concrete meaning. But in those days, Beethoven had a picture of a story when he composed pieces. So it molds the character of the piece. And so this description of that noble man, noble soul sitting outside in the night under the sky of stars. And then he proceeds when that the melody, like Czerny writes, is a kind of religious choral, very slowly, very noble, very introvert. And that at the beginning you have these 16th notes in staccato and the bass, like these slow steps of the man walking in the night. I think that's a beautiful picture, and it certainly helped me building this piece, of shaping this piece, and it's not done. I can tell you this needs really a lot of time. And certainly if you want to be able to reproduce that effect every time you play this, that needs time to build up. So I will play for you a few bars, and I will start in what I would say it's the easiest part. There's something I always do. The beginning, you can shape the beginning in different ways, and different ways I mean in different tempi as well. The Largo, of course, should guide you in something that is really slow, not standing still, but really slow. But there is a middle section that is very cantabile and can guide us in finding the right movement for the beginning. Of course, we have metronome numbers here as well from Czerny and Moschles. It ranges between 80 and 96, with 88 as a middle point that both have given. And we will arrive there. Of course, I was preparing this piece with in the back of my mind those metronome numbers. But it's important to let them go for a while, not to speed up or to slow down, but to create the movement within this tempo for yourself. It's really important. It's much harder than in the fast movement, certainly with these extreme pieces. So the middle part goes like this. So if you take this as a start, sorry to interrupt, so brutal actually, I should maybe take a little pause into consideration. But if we take this as a start and we go to the beginning, and also this character, this is very introvert, so don't expect to have large outbursts of energy, which once will happen, but even there you keep the character of the piece. Then we have something like this. I will use the left pedal here. Obviously it's not indicated, as Beethoven never indicates it, almost never. He does this sometimes when he wants to have the una corda, but just to help me shape the sound. It's very difficult on the pianoforte, on an instrument like this, which doesn't have this, well, for this pianissimo and piano sounds, the action kind of, it's, well, let me say it's not as advanced as the later pianos. It's very difficult to play soft on these pianos, much more easy on the clavichords. Also, the clavichord gives you these possibilities to end the phrases in such a gentle way that on the piano it's really hard. So I'll be using also a little bit of pedal sometimes, right pedal, it's not indicated, but just to build that effect. I don't know if I will keep continuing doing that over the coming months, but it's just to help me get my feeling, get my understanding of the piece within this layer of the character that I want to shape. So if we imitate this, if we take this tempo for the beginning, something like this. And now I will do it again. Every note here must receive its full potential. There were some chords where some notes were missing because I wanted to play them too soft. What happens then is that you will lose track of the melody. So the melody goes very slow. And like Czerny says, for adagios and some adagios and the largos, you count in 16ths. He gives a tempo on 8 notes. That's also an indicator for double beat. But anyway, that's not the topic of today. But you have to feel still these long lines that come to an end. And in order to do that, the quality of the sound is extremely important. Left hand, really short, I think. Beethoven indicates every time when it returns staccato sempre. And the right hand, tenuto sempre. So let's try it again. Crescendo. Okay. Well, it wasn't too bad, I guess. I hope you share the same opinion. Just checking what you're saying in the chat. John, about the tempo change, we'll check. So let me first check my tempo. I ended. I'm around 46 to 48, 50 if I type the tempo like this. So that's in the neighborhood of Moschles 96, which is a tempo that I fall back to often. So, but for pieces like this, you have a certain meter, and Czerny writes here specifically to be strict in tempo, so not to have too much of, change of tempo within the piece. But you still can have some, of course. Music lives, and that's what Moschles also describes when he writes the metronome number serves only for the beginning. Of course, when you take that and interpret that as well, it's only for the first bar of the first line, and then for the rest you do whatever you want. Of course, that's not what he meant. He also explained that. He said, well, it's music, of course, lives. You follow the stream of the music. And Marx writes very nicely about this as well, that he says there are pieces that are not, too deep in a way that like here you have all these emotions and shades, like for instance, like the B flat. That piece he mentions explicitly. You just play strictly in the bar, but other than that, you can have a little bit of rubato. Not well, how much it depends on how much you want to give the piece. I think it was fairly stable here, because that's it. And then here you have this. Czerny writes, give an emphasis on the G sharp. So also that's an indicator for this tempo, in fact, because otherwise it wouldn't, okay. So no, I'm really happy actually with this result, because I was working towards this live stream, and that's the great thing about these live streams, that I force myself also to have a point in time, namely today, Monday, 5 o'clock, to present this piece in one way or another. If it's really new, I will say that I will practice together, as we do sometimes at the clavichord as well. But this, obviously, the notes I can play. But to hit the character like I did now, generally speaking, I'm happy with that. So typically what I would do when I am practicing alone, I would just quit the instrument now and leave room in my mind to develop this feeling that you have, because that's really important. John says the staccato section should be the same tempo as the beginning. Let's practice that. Let's see what happens. That's certainly, although now Czerny actually writes from this passage onwards to slow down towards the end, to make a really long ritardando towards the end. So we can try that. He's the only one, I think, who writes this. So it's important, these pieces, to develop, and it takes months, really. And if you're not used to playing in these tempi for the slow movements, you will be completely lost, because these long lines, like at the beginning, you have to feel the melody, be very, not push the tempo here to, that happens often with modern recordings, also in the hip world, and they start to do that with Bach as well, start to push over the longer lines. That's something really late 19th century. So the inner peace that you feel, months ago, a year ago, when we did a lot of practicing sessions at the clavichord, I called that a metrical feeling. Don't know if that's correct, but where you have the division between the strong and the weak notes, and so the accentuated notes and the non-accentuated notes, so to build it as a unity within the beat. That's something you have to feel very, very strong when playing in these tempi, so that you have these melodies. And then you get this very solemn religious character in this case. Of course, the rhythm helps you, but the rhythm at the last part with the 16 notes, though, you would say that's easier because there you have a rhythmical pulse really to fill in every 16th note. There it's more difficult. Typically you have the tendency of speeding up, and that's, I think, what John was mentioning about. I hope not to do that, and if I did, it shouldn't happen there. Should keep the same piece as the beginning. So let's just try these two pieces together. You have to feel those lines. So the E in the left hand, F sharp, check the tempo. I'm in 46, so exactly in between 88 and 92 in double beat. So that's okay, then it's the fortissimo. This is a difficult passage because when these chords come here, you have the tendency to speed up there, but I have the impression that if you keep the movement really strict there, that there is something happening that, as Marx is calling, this is the focal point of the entire sonata. There something is built from nothing, from out of the darkness of the evening, of the stars. You know, that's the noble soul that Marx describes. That's the feeling there. Suddenly there is something majestic happening. And it's difficult to wait for that moment, because here you want to be a little bit more energetic, you know. And let's try not to be. Also here. Dangerous place to speed up. Crescendo and then fortissimo. But nobody expects the minor. And now fortissimo, sforzando. Building up. So I think here you can, well, speeding up is, it's like adding salt and pepper into your soup. How much? Just by a little, you change a lot. And if you come back then at this place to the original tempo, really original tempo, you will feel as a listener, hopefully, that that's happening. But you shouldn't have felt the little increases, a little bit of, I wouldn't say pushing forwards, but opening of the positive character, so to say, and translate that in a little bit of giving. as a kind of freedom that there is, and you come back then to the original tempo, and you should feel at home suddenly. Let's try that. So you have again these staccato notes. And now I use a pedal here, it's not indicated, but it sounds nice on this piano. Listen also to the 16 notes, how they help here. Ta-dum-pum. And now coming back. And now you can go even a little bit slower. It will enhance attention. Everybody knows what's coming, but you don't know when. And you don't know how. Melody. Check the tempo. It's fairly stable now, but within this, you know, you have this line of now 48 for the 8th note in single beat, so that's the modulus tempo of 96. And you build around this line a little bit, you give and you take. And let's try now what Czerny writes, to slow it down slowly over the last lines. Let's just try the effect. From here onwards. I slow down to 35, but that's difficult, and that's not for now. I need to first feel this movement, this tempo. What's important to me when I play these pieces, and again, this is a really extreme Largo middle section. It doesn't feel necessarily slow because you change the pedals. That's all. That's what it is about. This is a piece that you count, and I'm doing counting actually almost out loud, not really out loud, but in 16th notes to really keep me stay in the pedal, so to say. I will shift to 8 notes later so that you have the slow adagio pedals, Largo pedals. Once you feel that and you're confident that you keep that pulse going, then there's time to let it go again and enter the next layer of building this, what we were calling tempo rubato, but in this case, I think very, very, very gentle, not too much. As John rightly says, every time the theme returns, you should feel exactly the right tempo, because if you change a little bit, certainly if you play in double beat and you play in what I think is historical tempi, you change a little bit and the whole piece changes. And certainly that's not what you want. You want to have this identical feeling when the theme returns, which makes it great, because in between that theme you have things that are going on, so developments that are going on. Beethoven returns to that theme to bring everything together as a unity. And you as a player, I think, has the challenge to present that every time in exactly the same way, which is really hard here. Not only because of the tempo, but also for the sound. Bringing the sound, it's so open, and then staccato in the left hand, but pianissimo, but yet still firmly hit the note, so that you have this, you shape this quality tone, so to say. That's really, really challenging on a piano like this. It's easier on a Steinway, I can tell you, and it's easier on the clavichord. But the clavichord, it fails a little bit in these movements because it doesn't sustain the notes as long as on the piano, and that is something, yeah, certainly for these long choral notes, it's really beautiful when you still hear those notes and you can bring it back. So, well, I'm happy with what we achieved today in this practicing session. Let's just jump into the chat now and see what maybe you have some questions or something you want to share with us or with me. So, and I'm a little bit still with the first performance in my head. I think you can hear that I'm not focused anymore to the live stream. This piece is developing now, and I'm really happy. Not that it is finished. It's far from finished, but it's like the feeling that you are on the right path, the right street, the right direction. You know you're not there, but you know that this street will lead you to that point that is somewhere there now. So happy with that. John says you need a square piano. Anya will hit me. Probably she will, but she's used to these ideas, so my camera is really high position today. I have to look up to you. Okay, subdividing, yeah. So subdividing, that's essentially also what the double beat theory is about. You subdivide the metronome number. You see it as an indication of tempo, a metrical indication. And we have some really nice sources, guys, that are coming up. Right in the middle of Vienna, 1826. I will not reveal too much of the secrets now. It's not a secret, but there is a source that Lorenz has found that is so exactly describing double beat. There is nothing. I mean, it's even more clear than the Edouard Joux source that I presented for the first time in the Isidore Philippe first. And they all talk about this division of the metronome number and seeing the metronome number as a Zeitmaß. So Takt in German has two meanings. It has the first meaning is that of Zeitmaß, so time. The second meaning is that of a bar, and that's a misconception. People like Mealing and others, they say, well, it's just the bar. There is no other meaning. That's a strange standpoint, because you find that definition in 19th century, 18th century, 17th century, 16th century sources all over the place. It's Takt as two meanings, and the oldest meaning is only tempo, Zeitmaß. So if they speak about the binary unity of the Takt, then they speak about the metronome number as a time indication, and that's by definition a unity of 2 points. You cannot measure time with only one point. You need to come back. It's like the conductor beat, conductor Schlag. That's the other word that's so incredibly important in this discussion, that people say, yes, Schlag, that's just, well, Schlag. No, a Schlag is double Schlag. Double beat. I mean, double beat, conductor's beat. You have to give an upbeat before you can go down. That's the nature of it. It's so natural, and it's also described like that. But of course, yeah, you have to be willing to see the connection, and that's sometimes hard to enter the minds of people who really don't want to see this. But just saying, dividing, subdividing, as we count here in 16 notes, that's a part of that. And so I was again presenting another topic for another video now, but instead of looking to your chat. So there's a question about Handel. I played some Handel pieces, not so much, not so many, and there are some great fantasies or partitas waiting, but there's so much to be played, and I will focus in the future on Beethoven and Bach, and yeah, see how it develops. As for now, I don't have even too much of time to record standalone recordings, which annoys me more than I can tell. So sharing these practicing sessions is great, but I would love to extend those practicing sessions and just record after the session is done the result of it and present that as a tryout on YouTube. So those are kind of standalone recordings, but in between the practicing sessions and what I would see as a finished recording. An upstep still for the final recording of that will go on CD. So that YouTube really becomes an experiment platform where I can share things like here, open the kitchen, so to say, behind the scenes, because that's what we're doing, and also share the results of that. But there is only so much time in a day, you know. But we're working on that, and now spending a lot of time preparing the Beethoven project, and Anja's really, really busy with that. We both actually are. So yeah, there's only so much things we can do, but over the next years, Handel, of course. Jason writes, hi Wim, I was wondering if you were going to delve further into the Jew music book. Yes, sure. I will make a dedicated episode of maybe 1 or 2 episodes on that. For me, that's really a golden source, and if people don't accept that, that's a pity for them. But it's written what is written there. I must say, for Lorenz, this is a really important source, but not on the level of Adolf Mark's description of the meter, or this new source by, well, let's not give the name. It's an unknown name, by the way. So he is extremely critical for whenever a source to him is unquestionably given the double beat theory. For me, Edward Jew is top clear. That's no discussion about this. So yeah, and for me also to learn the entire context of the book more than I've done now. So that's all these episodes are for me also a way of diving in deeper into the content. Yeah, that's as Jason writes, that was a great find. That was an impressive find, and I still remember the evening that Lorenz called me with this Edward de Joux. There was another source that was connected to that, and I don't even recall the name. That's something we have to do in the near future, to make folders on Dropbox, Lorenz and I, to really put the information that we found in, because there is so much. And also, like you, Jason, and other people are sharing things, we have to systematically organize everything. That we have a folder with, quotes on the metronome numbers on itself, what they mean. It's a mantra of the single beat side, I would say. Musicologists say, well, they were never meant to be like that. It's just an indication. No, they weren't. There are literally hundreds of quotes that you can find that say a metronome number, finally the composer can give his exact time, his exact tempo. So we have a folder with all those quotes, a folder with quotes, original quotes, authentic quotes that speak about chains of tempo. And from that you will see that there's actually only certainly from the older generation, quotes that speak about increasing the tempo instead of slowing down and things like that. So yeah, digressing here now, but that's what we have to do. Yeah, Doug, if you watch the first episode of Isidore Philippe, the 23 notes a second, you'll find that source is presented there right in the middle. Andre says, isn't Mieling even a native German speaker? He should know that. Yeah, he is. Well, it's funny to say that Lorenz Gardient and Mieling, they had more than 20 years an email conversation, and I've witnessed parts of that, actually also published some parts with both of their agreements. I think if you would print that email conversation, it would be over 20,000 pages. It's impressive. And Mieling is next to Lorenz, I think. They both are the people with the best knowledge about the original sources. It's impressive, both of them. But it's also nice, not so nice, to see that when it comes to finding the truth, which is, of course, something that's hard. But for Mieling, he made the case in advance, and he admits that he says the pendule notation, because he doesn't speak about metronome numbers, the pendule notations, they must be read as today. There is no exception. So he is backwards proving his point. And in order to do that, he has to exclude a lot of things, like original definitions. He accepts, for instance, that the Schlag, the beat, is double in the measure notation. There is no way of not seeing that. And to the 17th century, you have a lot of, I've shared also some excerpts in the Isidore Philippe piece, I think. It's described as one Schlag is up and down of the arm of the conductor, so there's nothing you can say. So if Czerny writes about the Schlag, why is he not mentioning that definition? But still there is an interruption there, apparently, and suddenly when it comes to the interpretation of the actual indications of pendulum indications and metronome numbers, then the terminology doesn't apply anymore. And moreover, there are a lot of misprints then that suddenly occur. In fact, Mieling is basing his whole theory on one quote. That's the only sentence that he really builds his theory upon. That's a quote by actually a postman. That's not even a musician, but that's an important source anyway. And that's, funny enough, the only misprint. It's one word that Lorenz thinks happened in those French sources. For the rest, for Lorenz, there is no misprint at all. Mieling is giving misprints to Furetière, Mersenne, a lot of people. I mean, it's full of misprints, or he leaves out parts of original sources like Hotteterre. It's really, I mean, Hotteterre, we will make an episode on Hotteterre. It's so important. But yeah, that's how the discussion is going on behind the scenes. It's sometimes really frustrating because there is no openness to really search together for the truth, because the implications, it's clear to everyone. From the moment you talk about metronome numbers, you will hear people who really want to defend the performance practice of today. They will say, well, they're all are possible. There's no problem. And the 23 notes a second by Isidore Philippe is obviously a misprint. And so they start at the one hand saying the most obvious proofs are misprints, and for the rest it's all possible, without delivering the proofs, of course. But if you don't accept on the level of, being the metronome numbers as a real time indication, then there is no discussion, because that's the original start of all the theoretical reconstruction of metronome numbers, is that it's surprising how fast they are, and oftentimes impossible to perform. Yeah, and if you don't accept that as a starting point, yeah, then there is nothing to talk about. Yeah, Emmy writes about it, Swedish square pianos. This kind of music would work well on the Swedish clavichords, like they've built that up to the 19th century with 6 octaves even. Yeah, too much, not enough time, John writes. That's true. Alessandro asked how our daughters are doing. They don't play. Sophie is not, I tried, but you know, if daddy is the teacher, they don't accept a lot of things. And it's hard. It's hard. So with Evelyn, I hope she's 7 now. That's the right age. They both have a lot of musical talent. You can see that in children when they sing or when they dance, or when they just even try the pianos out. How rhythmical, how steady their rhythmical feeling is. If that's really steady, then and they both are. Yeah, it's difficult. Anya should step in, I think, in the musical education of our daughters. Yeah, as he says. Yeah. Okay. Andre, yes, the argument that 2 professional pianists can play a piece at speed is really absurd. The tempo should have been very logical and reachable in a day. Yeah. Yeah, and just to close this discussion, not just there are a lot of topics you can tell if I talk about this, because there are a lot of topics that I will address on the channel. But every 2 weeks, it gives me a little bit of breath also to do other things, and also to make these episodes better than I did in the past. But one of the amazing founds of Lawrence recently is 6 or 7 historical quotes on the maximum speed that musicians can reach and should reach. So you have partly the quotes that come from physical documents or physical treatises, where they say how many notes can the human brain perceive. I connected that to some sources that say what's the fastest that a musician can play, and they're all contemporary sources. I mean, end 18th century, early 19th century, and the most astonishing source is that of I don't know the name; it's unknown names, but he says that a professional violin player. I'm talking about the maximum speed, so not a keyboard player, but because they generally play slower than string instruments. The maximum speed that a violinist can reach in a prestissimo is 9 to 10 notes a second. So that's even way below the 30 notes a second that I was putting as a benchmark of possible piano playing. I mean, and then constantly. I mean, you can reach 15 notes in one scale. That's not too hard, but extending that for minutes, that's not possible. But it's not even important anymore. When I will have presented those sources, then the discussion is not those who raise a finger and say, I can play that, I can play everything of Czerny in single beat, but I have no time to do that. And yeah, you should accept those few recordings that are out there on YouTube as a proof for the whole. Then we are past that, because we have now contemporary sources talking about what in their eyes is the maximum speed of players. And if a violin player of the highest professional grade can play at maximum 10 notes a second, then it's end of discussion. And sadly enough, then not even 30-40% of the metronome numbers really become troublesome. It's over 60% that are impossible then, because we have a lot of pieces that range between 9 to 12 notes a second. The series that we're going to make about impossible metronome numbers will have all the benchmark of being higher than 13 notes a second. And for now, I think that list is over 100 pieces. And it's amazing. I mean, if Lawrence spends 1 day searching for those pieces, he ends up with 50 new pieces. It's all over the place. So, but if we're going to put 10 notes a second as a benchmark, yeah, then we will have thousands. It's interesting, I think. Okay, I see Anya talk about cooking. It means that it's time to wrap up. And hope that will be a nice meal that we have. Anya's a wonderful cook. If you ever have time to come over, we'll invite you for dinner. As that's always great moments here, sitting around the table when Anya has prepared something. Okay, having said that, I thank you for being here. I hope this session was useful for you. Thank you for my patrons. As always, they support in an incredible way the things we're doing. There's a link in the description box in case you would have a look. I have to update our Patreon page, by the way, but it's still, I mean, the main things will remain the same. And it's true, they are really supporting the things we're doing. We are in a bridge period now with the Fritz Pianoforte is coming really soon, this week. Will not announce a day, but it's really soon. And I make some videos about that. But that's really drilling a hole in the, you know, the routine that we had with the clavichord. So I'll have to find my way in dealing with two pianos and the clavichord, building also on the Beethoven project, and then still have YouTube ongoing, which is really important, because once you would let the schedule go, everything goes. And this YouTube channel has been so beneficial for me. The schedules, the discipline it takes to have the recordings ready and to have these live streams ready, these practicing sessions, that's an incredible gift to be able to do that. So, and the patrons are really supportive of that. Okay, guys, again, hope to see you soon. And for the patrons who are in the chat, on Saturday, the 16th, we'll have our monthly hangout, so video call. Would love to see a lot of you there. Okay, have a nice day, and we see each other Thursday again. Probably not with a live stream, but with a recorded practicing session, because that's the deadline for our Beethoven project, our subsidy application. So things will happen, undoubtedly, and that will happen on Thursday night probably. So that's the reason why I probably will record the session. But next Monday, we'll be back here at the piano with more Beethoven. Okay, guys, take care and see you soon again. Bye.